News Now is brought to you by the Bank of Guam, the People's Bank.
It's in my office. I have my agents.
From the Pacific News Center in Hagåtña, Guam, here's Clint Rigel and Janella Carrera with Betsy Brown and Roselle Romanes. PNC Sports with Blake Watson. And weather with Joanna O. With your news now.
Hafa, good evening, and thanks for tuning in to the Pacific News Center. You're watching PNC's News Now. Again, as always, we are broadcasting live in Saipan and in Guam. I'm Clint Rigel.
And I'm Betsy Brown. Thanks for watching News Now tonight. At the top of your news tonight, the Pacific News Center has learned through reliable sources that the Guam Police Department's crime lab and evidence room have been shut down and evacuated. According to these sources, the crime lab, which is located in Minilao, was shut down at 12 noon, and its employees were sent home because of poor working environment resulting from the big chiller or environmental control system that has been out of order at that facility. PNC has learned that the evidence room, which is located in Tietzen, was also shut down. Its employees were sent home at 2:30 p.m. when evidence of asbestos was found in the facility. The evacuation of these two facilities comes just a day ahead of a legislative oversight hearing on the facilities. PNC has also confirmed that Senator Frank Uggan Jr. toured both facilities today ahead of tomorrow's hearing. Senator Uggan is the chairman of the Legislative Committee on Public Safety, which is the same committee that is holding tomorrow's oversight hearing.
A man is in critical condition after he was struck by a car on Marine Corps Drive last night. PNC's Roselle Romanes has more in this report.
An unidentified man who appears to be in his 40s is fighting for his life after he was hit by a car. The Guam Fire Department responded to an auto pedestrian incident with serious injuries on Route 1 to Muning by Atkins Crow Motors. GFD spokesman Lieutenant Ed Artero says the 911 call was received at about 10:22 in the evening. Guam Police Department spokesman Officer AJ Balahaja says the man was crossing Route 1 towards Guerrero Street and was struck on the outer lane by a Nissan Altima driven by a 64-year-old man. CPR was conducted on the man en route to the Guam Memorial Hospital. GMH spokeswoman June Perez says the unidentified male was brought to the hospital at about 10:30 in the evening and was last reported in critical condition. Roselle Romanes, PNC News.
A Department of Corrections officer has been arrested after sources say he was found bringing drugs into DOC yesterday. 32-year-old Eugene Senega was arrested last night after DOC officials turned his case over to local and federal authorities. Internal Affairs Officer Jeff Limo says the contraband was found during a bag check at the Minilao facility yesterday morning. After the items were discovered, Limo says Officer Senega was interviewed by the Internal Affairs Division and the information they gathered was forwarded to local and federal authorities. Meanwhile, Limo says an Internal Affairs investigation will continue.
It's in my office. I have my agents looking at it, and they will give me the status of the reports about, and will determine, and I will get with the Director of Corrections, and only the Director of Corrections can make that decision whether administrative leave will be appropriate at this point. Right now, it's still with my agents, and the rest of the case is with the local and federal authorities at this time.
Limo says bag searches and searches of personnel are standard procedures at DOC, as are random vehicle checks.
Guam DOE is still under high-risk grantee status, and there's no telling how long this status will last. There's also no telling how long GDOE will have to continue paying a third-party fiduciary agent to handle its federal funds.
The Guam Department of Education has been on high-risk grantee status since 2003, and this high-risk grantee status has led to the federal government forcing the implementation of a third-party fiduciary agent to oversee the way GDOE handles its federal funds. GDOE spends $3.4 million a year paying this third-party fiduciary to handle its federal funds. So how long will this last? It appears there's no clear way for GDOE to get off of high-risk status. It appears then that there's no end in sight.
Right, because it appears as if you're really doing quite a bit, but if that target keeps moving and we're not clear about the indicators of success that you can check off even internally, then it's somewhat unfair. That's probably what happened, and I'm wondering if during your last meeting you were able to speak about maybe a list of indicators that they can give the local, DOE, so that it would be, they can just check off and say, okay.
Right, there is no checklist.
And that is a major problem. How can Guam DOE get off of its high-risk grantee status and get rid of its third-party fiduciary agent if there's no clear way to do it?
There isn't really a map out. There is a corrective action plan that's there, but really the only way to get out of high risk is to pull the trigger. There was a trigger provision in the special condition that says when you are ready, you may formally request that to have these special conditions amended.
However, if GDOE pulls the trigger and makes this request, it means the federal government will make a deep and thorough investigation of all of GDOE, something that could set them back even farther if more problems are discovered.
Is that the last time that I met 3 years ago with US DOE had made it very clear that even if the federal side of our accounting is in place and it's squeaky clean and everything is in place and they've approved that, they want to see that the total system is in place, including our management of local funds, because eventually it will affect the manner by which we manage the federal funds.
GDOE spends $3.4 million a year paying a third-party fiduciary to handle its federal funds.
Have you noticed the price for eggs has gone up? Bakeries and other businesses sure have. It's because of a new law in California limiting the number of chickens that can be kept in a cage. And since the law went into effect, the cost of eggs, not just in California, but also here, has gone up. Main Street Deli is hoping the rise in the cost of eggs is something they won't have to pass on to their customers. But manager Amber Stoll says the increased cost of eggs in recent months is already hurting revenue.
It's gone up quite a bit. It used to be like $40 for a case. Now it's getting upwards to $100.
With the number of eggs that Main Street Deli uses in its products, they go through about 2 to 3 cases of eggs every week.
Well, we use eggs in a lot of different things. All of our baked goods, pretty much, with the exception of our bread. So all the stuff on the counter you normally see, blondies, coffee cakes, muffins, every baked good that just flies out the door normally.
The cost of eggs went up after a California law went into effect on January 1st, limiting the number of chickens that can be kept in a cage. And since it's difficult to get eggs locally, Stoll says the deli and bakery is trying to manage the increased cost without sacrificing the quality of their product.
Well, we like to keep the same quality. You know, we make everything in small batches, so we like to keep that. But we do have to put the increase somewhere, and unfortunately it's going to go to our customers.
Main Street is celebrating its 6th year in business this month.
There's a live poultry ban in effect. The Department of Agriculture has placed a ban on the importation of live poultry to Guam from the mainland United States. The temporary ban is in response to a recent outbreak of highly pathogenic avian influenza in the mainland. Territory veterinarian Dr. Tom Poole explains that the virus is spread by wild birds migrating from Canada to the United States. He adds that the virus appears to be short-lived, and he says the Department of Agriculture may be able to lift the 90-day ban a little bit early.
We're reevaluating daily, really. We're continuing to watch this daily, and this started with migratory birds. It's thought that it will probably end as the migrations end, which is pretty much ended. So we hope that it'll get better quickly and we'll be able to turn this thing off.
And according to Dr. Poole, more than 1,000 live chickens were imported to Guam between October 1st of last year and January 1st of this year.
Well, stay tuned because coming up next, Blake Watson is going to tell you what's ahead in sports. But what does that have to do about the price of eggs?
Announcing the debut of the Robbie Weather Triple J Youth Soccer League. Well, they're back. Plus, we also got girls softball. All that in sports. Be sure to be there. Be sure